Good morning, good afternoon, good night. It depends on what time you are listening to me. It doesn't really matter. I want to give you a warm welcome to a new episode of our podcast, the Motocors Project. We will talk about an interesting book that our friend Carlos proposed. Of that, let's present the people that are joining us for today's podcast. Today, in the Motocors project, we have Carlos Amaya, Ricardo García, Joce Peña, Manuel Ramos, and as you know, myself, your host, César Romero. So, with that said, let's begin. Tell us, Carlos, which book are we going to talk about today?
Hello, Cesar, and good morning to all the people that will listen to us and the people that will join us to talk about this book for today's podcast. Today, we will talk about Crime and Punishment, a book that I think that is very interesting since I started reading it. I don't know what the other members think about this book, or even if they know it, or if it is totally new for them.
I think I've heard a little about that book before I came, right? My grandparents had to mention it at some point, and I'm sure of that because they are lovers of reading, and my parents told me that my grandparents read a lot and they enjoy it, right? And if I'm not wrong, I think realistic novels are his favorite genre.
If I'm not mistaken, I read about it. It's a book about a detective who beats up criminals, right? Or something like that. I don't remember very well.
No, Ricardo. I think it's not a police novel. If I'm not wrong, it's more like a realistic novel, right, Carlos? It's about how a person deals with the guilt that comes from having committed two homicides and how this leads him to be a paranoid person and learns
It's
to live
correct,
with.
Jose. It is a very interesting realistic novel. I think I talked to Manuel about it once off camera. He read a little with me.
And how would you like to start a podcast? I mean, what's going to be the type of format that we're going to use? Any recommendation?
Oh, yeah, let's do it like this. We could talk about a chapter and then comment a little bit about it, like our opinion or what we think about it.
I think it's a good idea. We look the captures better with an analysis that we can give them so they can hear a deeper analysis from our point of view so they can have a better idea of the book and then they can decide whether they to read him or not, right? I don't know if y'all agree, and if y'all do, I will start by talking a little about the chapter one.
Well, I think it's fine like this. As long as we start now, it may be good.
Okay, well, in the first chapter, Raskolnikov, who is the main character, goes to an old loan shark named Alyona Ivanovna to pawn the only valuable he owns. The old woman, blinded by greed, lends a small number of rubles and fires the young man out, having to accept the miserable deal. On the way, Raskolnikov thinks about the place where he will keep the money. A tavern gets in his way, and he decides to go in and have a beer. Right?
Oh, yeah, alright, sounds very interesting, but I think I need a little more context.
Yeah, very interesting the things that Manuel said, but I think we should first summarize the main idea of the book, like Cesar said. Well, I searched for some information and Google says that Crime and Punishment tells the history of a very low income student who receives help from his mother and sister in order to survive. However, he is forced to drop out of school and turns to an old woman, a moneylender. A moneylender who provides him with some little amount of money to survive by himself.
And in exchange, he found some objects that remained in the hands of the old woman, just like old clothing.
Yeah, I forgot that. Thanks for complimenting what I said, Jose.
No problem, man.
And now let's talk about the second chapter. Marmeladov, a government official, approaches and speaks to him because he thinks that he's a colleague.
Yeah, I read that chapter, and I read that Raskolnikov told him the truth, and at first he wants to talk him, but instantly he misses his loneliness again. And Marmeladov, or something like that, I don't know how to say that name, it is really difficult, but Marmeladov tells him that about his wife Catherine and their daughter Sonia.
Oh, well, the pronunciation is like Marmeladov. And well, then Marmeladov invites Raskolnikov to his house. In the way getting there, Marmeladov told Raskolnikov that alcohol had ruined his life and his family too. He said that Carolina had another children, and that Sonia was his daughter. Carolina lost her job, and she couldn't get along with Sonia yet. All savings were used by Marmeladov, who spent them drinking non-stop. When they got there, he finds Carolina, whose appearance was very bad because she had tuberculosis, apart from the misery that they were living in that house.
If I'm not wrong, her children were playing in the dirt or something like that, right? And next, Catalina complains to her husband and warns Raskolnikov, who lives thinking about all that happened.
If I'm honest, for me, the life that the main character has is very sad. The main character has a very big economic instability, since in the first two chapters it is very evident how he suffers from it without taking into account all the things that are happening to him, right?
I agree with you. You can see how stressed he lives.
Well, if you feel bad about Raskolnikov's life in the first two chapters, just wait for the next one. In the third chapter, Raskolnikov's little room constantly reminds him of his condition. Anastasia, the only servant in the house, wakes him up with a tea and a letter.
Oh yeah, the letter is sent by Raskolnikov's mother, who after finding out that her son left school due to lack of resources, collected some rubles that she sent as an aid, right?
Yes, and further down in the letter, the mother told to him about Dunia, Raskolnikov's sister, who suffered countless misfortunes, just like being fired from her job after the lady suspected that she was sleeping with her husband.
Yeah, the humiliation was deep, but shortly after, the mother continues telling him that Miss Marta Petrovna discovered a letter that proved her complete innocence, and it was one more of her husband's betrayals.
It's very interesting to mention that the book tells that the mother recounts that during the interim, Dunya began relations with Don Pedro Petrovich, consider of the court, and that the marriage was going to be soon. Then the mother apologized for not having taken him into account with this decision, but trust in the good heart of the future husband of his sister.
Well, I think that at least the main character has a family to support him, who, despite that, seeing that the situation that he's experiencing is horrible and they are still there from him.
You have a point. His economic situation is unsustainable, but the family does not abandon him at least. Here it is shown that his mother cares a lot about his current state.
Well, the talk is getting so interesting, but I think we're running out of time by now. I would love to keep going with this, but the time is hitting us. So, thank you all for coming and talk about your experience with this book.
The pleasure is us, Cesar, and I think that when I say this, I'm talking for everybody.
Yeah, thanks for letting us be here today.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation, Cesar. To be honest, I didn't want to come to this podcast because I don't have a lot of time. I don't regret it for coming today. I enjoyed a lot and learned more things today from this book. At the beginning, I didn't remember very much about this book, but little by little, I was remembering many things from the book, and maybe we can meet in the future, and in the next time we can review some more chapters with more time.
I agree with you, Ricardo. The novel sounds very interesting, and it is a shame that we could only talk about 3 chapters, because Crime and Punishment is a very interesting novel. This novel has many chapters, and only in this podcast we could not talk about all the chapters.
Yeah, these three chapters are great, but the rest of the chapters are spectacular. But we don't have any more time, and well, it was a pleasure to be here. And thank you again, Cesar, for inviting us.
Okay, so I think that we can do another episode of this book and talk about the other chapters that we couldn't today. But see you all next time, and thank for joining us to all the people that listen to this podcast. This was the Motocors project. Goodbye and have a good day.